that networking is something only extroverted people do well, and that it's only needed for business owners. Not true. Mentors don't have to be formal. It doesn't have to come through some formal mentoring program. No single individual can provide you with everything you need to grow. The career you want doesn't get built alone, and it doesn't get built by waiting. It gets built through strategic leaps, experiences that stretch you beyond what feels comfortable. When I was younger in my career, I used to believe two things that were not accurate about career success. One was that a supervisor is also a mentor. And in my first career, I learned the hard way that this is not the case. Some supervisors might want to support and look out for you, but ultimately, their goal is to help you do well in your job performance and hold you accountable when you don't do well. And some supervisors also want to serve as your mentor, but not all of them do. I was very fortunate that in a later role, I had a supervisor who also wanted to be a mentor as well as a sponsor, which truly catapulted my career. But that is not always the case for everybody. The second inaccuracy that I learned over time is that networking is something only extroverted people do well, and that it's only needed for business owners. Not true. Welcome back to The Hard Skills. I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, leadership advisor, psychologist, and founder of TowerScope. In the last episode, we talked about taking strategic leaps, the kind of stretch opportunities that define your career trajectory. And I ended by saying that what makes those leaps survivable is having the right people around you. So in this second part of this career series, we're going to talk about those people, mentors, networks, the human infrastructure of a career that actually works. But I want to start by busting two myths. The first is that mentoring has to be formal. And the second is that networking is something you either love or hate. And if you hate it, you're out of luck. Neither of those things are true. And by the end of this episode, I hope you're going to see why. So let's talk about mentoring first. Most of us grew up thinking mentors are assigned, and maybe even that supervisors also assign themselves as your mentor. Formal mentoring relationships, either through a formal mentoring program or through your supervisor, can be valuable when done right, but they aren't the only kind of opportunities for mentoring that you have. And honestly, they're not always the most impactful kind when the match isn't great. So here's a reframe I want to offer to you. Mentors don't have to be formal. It doesn't have to come through some formal mentoring program, nor do they need to know they are your mentors. I mean, think back to childhood. Your mother may have supported you in one specific way, your father in another, a teacher, a coach, an older friend, each of them offered something different. None of them could have given you what the others gave. It was a group effort. And okay, maybe your mom and dad and maybe your grandparents were semi-formally assigned and announced they were your mentors, but frankly, not even the case. Not every parent is a great mentor either, right? So each was mutually chosen. It was a mutually chosen relationship. You got something out of it. They got something out of it, right? Your career works the same way. No single individual can provide you with everything you need to grow. It's not realistic, nor is it fair to rest all your hopes and dreams on one person's influence. And what you need is a constellation, a loose network of people you learn from in different ways. And some of those people will be formal mentors you've asked out to coffee or to have a meeting, right? Some of them are going to be peers that you watch closely because you're impressed or you admire them. Some are going to be leaders in entirely different fields who you've never actually spoken with, but whose public work or writing or decisions you really learn from and model. In my own career, some of the most important mentoring I've received actually came from people who had no idea I was watching and learning, and I listened to how they navigated difficult conversations. I noticed what they said no to. I paid attention to how they handled failure publicly. You can learn an enormous amount from observation. So the practical question then isn't just who is my mentor? It's who are the people I admire and how do I learn from them? And when it's possible to reach out, do it. Most people genuinely love to share how they got to where they are when someone asks with real curiosity and specificity, and then tell them what specifically you admire. Ask them about a decision they made. Begin there. Oh, by the way, I interviewed Dr. Deborah Heiser, the author of The Mentorship Edge and the founder of the Mentor Project, on all things mentoring, and it was really eye-opening. And I'm going to add that episode in the show notes so that you can have access to more on mentoring there, as well as what she writes about. Okay, now let's talk about the word that makes half the people I know shudder: networking. Guess which half? Yep, the introverted half. Like me, introverts, including past me, have this outdated definition where it requires an extroverted, schmoozing, whining, dining, lounge room, boisterous atmosphere kind of experience to successfully network. But nothing could be further from the truth if you really want to network successfully. So here's the reframe that I've come to embrace. Networking is made of the net and the work. And I wish that whoever came up with the word networking had actually flipped the word to be work netting, because the most effective networkers aren't people who are great at small talk or who go to every event and collect business cards. They're people who are genuinely invested in the work, in becoming good at what they do, in contributing something of value, and then building authentic relationships with people who are similarly invested and want to talk about it deeply, and create a collection or a net of people who will support and catch you when you take leaps in your work. Work netting, right? The net that those relationships create becomes something that can catch you when you fall, hold you up when you're under scrutiny, and expand your reach in ways that no amount of solo effort can match. And this matters especially for folks in leadership roles. Leadership is a social process. It can also be a lonely process. It's about influence, not just output. A strong net of work relationships, people who know your work, your integrity, your thinking, is your greatest protection and your greatest amplifier. And here's what I find really powerful. When you become the kind of person who connects others, who can say, oh, you need to meet someone who understands X, let me introduce you to, you become a hub, you become a resource, you become a net for others' work opportunities. And that kind of influence is powerful and impactful. Okay, now let's get practical. How do you actually network in a way that's natural? And how do you find a mentor in a way that's natural? Let's start with networking. Guess what? I'm going to say something that should be very relieving and reassuring to many of you. You don't have to work the room. You just have to aim for one real conversation at a time. Even if it's at an event that actually called it a networking event, right? Even if it's at an event that's actually called a networking event, your goal is not to collect business cards or as many LinkedIn connections as you can. I know that's going to feel satisfying, but it's not going to become your work netting. Your goal is to find one or two people you genuinely want to know better and to have an actual conversation with them. Introverts can do that. So can extroverts. We all can do that. And you can do that in one of two ways. First is that if the conference has a list of names, let's say it's a conference, for example, right? If the conference has a list of names and ideally an app with all of those attendees, look through it in advance. Is there a talk you want to attend where there's a speaker? Is there someone who has a job you're interested in and learning from or about, or at a company you've been interested in? Those are the folks you will want to try to meet at the event, or even better, if possible, reach out in advance to connect. Here's a personal example. I had registered for a local event recently, and someone who was planning on going reached out on LinkedIn and said, hey, we don't know each other, but I saw you're going to be attending. I haven't met you before at one of these events, and I'm looking forward to meeting you. And as an introvert, I felt welcomed because there wasn't any sell or expectation, just to meet. And when I got there, I now felt like I had someone I kind of knew that I could say hi to. Yeah. So the second way to have an actual conversation is simply when you show up and you're in your vicinity, like if they're sitting at your table or next to you at a conference presentation or on a webinar and they're there and you're there for, interest in the webinar. In any of these cases, connect with them. If you hear something they're talking about that interests you, ask them more about what they're working on. Ask them what's been the hardest part of their role lately. Ask what they wish they knew 5 years ago. Ask them what they're excited about or bringing them most joy out of the work they're doing. And if it's in a webinar and you heard something that really intrigued you and you want to get to know them better, send them like a little back channel message. Hey, I loved what you said about blah. Can we connect further about it? Right? And then set up that call to be curious and to listen and to ask more questions, to learn more about them. Real networking is just relationship development over time. That's all it is. And it pays increasing dividends the more you invest in it. But it does require that you see it as part of your job, not something you do randomly or rarely, only when you have extra time. It's part of building any relationship, right? If like you move to a new neighborhood, you're not automatically going to become best friends with the people on your street. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes, slow like little connection points, right? And at work, it's career proofing. One of the most painful situations I have seen is when someone has rested their entire career in their supervisor's hands and something happens where they lose that relationship or that job. And now they're stuck or trapped in a career or not having a role where they have no options because they never developed those strong relationships as part of their work netting. Okay, so now moving on to some practical tips for potential mentoring. Start by reaching out to someone you admire and asking them to coffee or a 20-minute virtual call. Tell them something specific that you have noticed about how they operate and let them know you're really interested and you admire how they got there and you would like to know more about what it took. Most people say yes to that kind of approach because it's genuine and because everyone likes to feel that their path was worth something to somebody else and that someone sees value in them. Somebody admires something that they did, right? Not everybody recognizes the strengths they have or the impact that they've had or the successes that they had. And when somebody points it out, it automatically creates appreciation and connection. Move that forward. And don't underestimate the people already around you, your peers, your colleagues across departments, even the people who report to you. These are all potential sources of mentor learning. Yeah. And you don't have to tell them that they're your mentors and you're learning from them. Some of my most important professional development has come from people who came to me as mentees because teaching forces my own clarity of thinking, which makes me better at the work that I do. Okay. Before I wrap this up with a few final notes, if today's conversation sparked something for you, whether that's around mentoring, networking, or navigating a career transition, I want to make sure that you know about an upcoming event I'm co-hosting. Dr. Sharon Hull and I are offering a half-day career designing workshop that brings together everything we've talked about in the past 3 episodes in a live, hands-on format with space for real conversation and personalized guidance. This is the kind of work that's hard to do alone. And having structured support, expert facilitation, and a room of peers who are navigating similar questions makes a real difference. I would genuinely love to work with you in that space. So the link to register is in the show notes. The event itself is on April 17th. Spots are limited. If you've been sitting on the fence, now is the time because registration ends March 30th to give us some time for some pre-work. Okay, here's the through line from these career episodes. The career you want doesn't get built alone, and it doesn't get built by waiting. It gets built through strategic leaps, experiences that stretch you beyond what feels comfortable, through a mentoring ecosystem that's richer and more flexible than most of us have been taught to imagine, and through intentional, authentic investment in relationships that make up your professional net. None of this requires you to be a different kind of person. You don't love schmoozing. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be willing to take one step forward with your eyes open and in a strategic way. And if today's episode was useful, I would love it if you shared it with a colleague who's weighing a big decision. And if you want to go deeper on this, in the show notes, I've added the specific Psychology Today post where I initially wrote about these topics, as well as Dr. Heiser's information and the information about the workshop on career designing. I'm Dr. Mira Brancu. Stay steady, stay present, and keep building those hard skills muscles.